Hey everybody, this is Chad the Gaming Dad here on Dad's Games, and here's another Friday Father Knows Best for you. And this week, what I'm thinking about, because of the games that came out, is that single player games are not dead. No sir, in fact they're alive and well. Over the last couple of years, it seems like more and more games have been coming out that are multiplayer only, online only. Stuff like Destiny, stuff like The Division. You know, these games are pretty popular and they sell a lot, but people really don't like the fact that there's pretty much no single player campaign. Like take Division, for example. I played that for 10 hours and I couldn't trade it in fast enough because I don't have a group of guys that I can just call up or count on being there at any given time to jump on and play this game with. There's really nothing for a single player to do. You get to a certain point where, you know, the game kind of gets boring anyway when you're playing by yourself, but you get to a certain point where you really can't progress unless you join in with other people. And unless you're joining up with people that you know, that you're having fun with, it's just no fun. So, goodbye Division. But for other stuff, Destiny, it's a little bit better on the single player, but again, it's really much better with multiplayer. And a lot of these companies would like to make you think that multiplayer is all the rage. It's the only way to go. We're only going to do multiplayer games. There's no such thing as single player anymore. It's the online age. Everyone's connected. You know what I say to that? No, I don't agree. Because just like any other thing in video games, or in life in general, you have to break it down back to its simplest form. Back to what made it good in the first place. You know, when video games were invented, when they first started, I mean, there was only multiplayer games because there had to be two people. There was no game to play unless somebody else was on the other side of that pong. You know, bing, boom, 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 back and forth. But as they progressed, the reason why games got more and more popular was because you could play them by yourself. You know, the Atari 2600, outside of sports games, which required still two players because they didn't really have AI, outside of sports games, pretty much everything was play by yourself. Okay, you could have 2 and 3 player, but it was take turns, one at a time, single player. Get into the NES, and even all the other ones going all the way up until just recently. You know, toward the middle of the 360 and the PS3 era into today, everything had a pretty substantial single player. And then if there was multiplayer added to it, that was icing on the cake, you know? So outside of PC games that were only multiplayer games, you know, like massively multiplayer online, you know, MMO, RPG, stuff like that, that's what those are there for. That's what those were created for. But it seems like to me that over the last couple of years, games like Battlefront that have come out with no single player, stuff like I had mentioned already with The Division and Destiny, these guys make it seem like that's the wave of the future. That's what's going to go forward. We're just going to have that, and it's going to be great because everybody's going to be playing together and da-da-da-da-da. I think of it as kind of like a fad, like anything else. Or maybe not a fad. Fad's the wrong word. Maybe, I don't know, a gimmick or some sort of phase that gaming goes through. I mean, we had it with the controls. Go back to the Wii, we had the motion controls, and then of course Sony tried to do it with the Move, and Microsoft tried to do it with the Kinect. All these things, everybody had move controls. Move controls were the future. That's all we're going to do is move controls, move controls. Heck, even the 6-axis controller for Sony had movement in it. No one even uses that stuff anymore. You know, I like the Wii, and I like the motion controls in certain games, but it wasn't the wave of the future. It was the wave of right then. Just like everything. You know, it always goes back to where it started. The core gameplay. You know, they try to take the controller out of your hands, or they try to take the keyboard out of your hands when you're playing on PC, and they want you to use these motion controls, or they want you to do, you know, VR now. Everybody's got the VR and everything. And I'm sure that playing VR is amazing for certain games, but not for everything. You're not going to play VR for everything. You know, maybe a game where you're driving or flying and you're in a cockpit or something like that. But from what I've heard, playing VR in like first-person shooter games gets a little bit rough and people start getting sick because your body's not actually walking around, but your brain kind of thinks you are. So anyway, stuff like that. It's going to be here and it's going to have its purpose and people are going to like it for what it is and what it does. But you have to remember that the core gameplay, the thing that makes playing games fun in the first place, the most basic element of the whole thing is you by yourself with a game and a controller or a keyboard and a mouse playing alone or with other people. You can do, co-ops or take your turns, 2-3 players, stuff like that. That's where it all started from. And not to say that things don't need to change and not to say that things shouldn't progress and change. You can't forget about the core. You can't forget about the reason why everybody came to the party in the first place. The reason why I was thinking about this, single player is not dead, is because this week, and I think the one game came out last week, but there are 3 games specifically that have just come out that reinforce this theory of mine absolutely. Because let's take a look. We've got the biggest game that's come out recently is Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3, yes, there is a multiplayer component in it where you can, summon other people. You can leave little notes for each other and stuff like that. But let's face it, this is a single player game. And you're by yourself going up against all these monsters. It takes a long time. It's a long game. Very hard. Very much one of those games that you have to just play and play and play until you master it to get to the end. It's a throwback. In my eyes, in my opinion, that's a throwback to like the old style games. Okay? But okay, maybe you're not into the hardcore, play it over and over and over again until you finally don't get killed. Then you got stuff like Ratchet and Clank. The Ratchet and Clank game came out this week and everybody says it's great. It's getting great reviews. I personally think it looks amazing. It really does look like a cartoon, as much as they've been saying that. Heck, I think I remember saying that about an NES game when it came out. It looks like TV! This one really does look like TV. I think they finally got to the point where they got games that now look like a cartoon you watch, and that's pretty cool. Ratchet and Clank doesn't have any online multiplayer. It's a single-player game. It's about 14 or 15 hours from what I've read and what I've watched on YouTube. But it's getting great reviews, and I'm sure a lot of people are picking it up, especially since it's only $40. So there you go. You can either go with the Dark Souls, which is your ultra hardcore, or you can go with your Ratchet and Clank, which is your cartoony platforming game with lots of guns and shooting, both of which are not big online games that are always connected, that have a million people in there and you can't play them by yourself. That stuff is great. I'm so happy to see that these things are continuing to come out and that they're selling well. The third game that I wanted to mention, if you don't like Dark Souls and you don't want, the cute stuff with Ratchet and Clank and everything, the third one that I'm playing right now that I can't get enough of is Enter the Gungeon. Enter the Gungeon is amazing. Again, single player game. It's very similar to The Binding of Isaac, going through these dungeons over and over again. It's roguelite or roguelike or however they say it, where the levels are pretty much generated on the fly. Every time you go in, it's not exactly the same. It's going to be close. There's going to be some similarities, but every dungeon layout you go through is going to be a little different. Different enemies, different everything. This thing's great. I mean, it looks like an old 16-bit game, but then it has all these other... It's just a great game. Looks great, plays great, but then again, I really like Binding of Isaac as well. These games are awesome. It mixes a bullet hell shooter with like a 16-bit era type of a game. It's just too cool. But again, bringing it back to what we're talking about today, single player. Single player, single player, single player. Don't forget about single player. And single player is not dead. It is absolutely the one thing that we can't do without. I mean, if you don't have the single player, you don't have anything. That's what brought us here in the first place. Heck, even sports games. Even sports games nowadays have extensive single player modes, such as in the show. You have Road to the Show, where you have to make your character, play your position. That's fun. I mean, I actually play, softball, and I play soccer, I play hockey, I play a lot of different sports, and then I play these games where you get to, do the create your own player, be a pro mode in EA games like FIFA, like hockey, NHL, and then in the baseball one where it's Road to the Show, you actually feel like you're playing the sport. You're not just controlling guys playing the sport, but it's like you playing it because you're only controlling your guy and you have to play your position and stuff. But anyway, that's kind of going off on another tangent. But again, my point is that's a very single player mode, even in sports games. So I know that we've seen a bunch of games that have come along down the road here and had no single player. They were all multiplayer. But I don't think that's going to stick around for a long time. I think that's bound to make its way back out of here where, yeah, you can have a primarily online game like a lot of the Call of Duties where they have a story mode that's single player, but it's not super long, not real substantial, 8 to 10 hours. But at least you still have that. So that's my 2 cents for this week. That's my thoughts on Father Knows Best. Let me know what you think. Do you like the single player games? Do you like multiplayer only? Do you wish single player would go away? Do you wish multiplayer would go away? Let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. And other than that, remember that you never outgrow video games. I am Chad the Gaming Dad, and this is Dad's Games. Thank you for watching, and so long, everybody.